as the Mavericks have won 11 of their last 12 games, have the longest current active winning streak in the NBA at 7 games, a season high 7 games above 500 at 15-8. No, excuse me, 8 games at 16-8, I should say. Make sure I get that right. So the question is, gentlemen, who deserves the credit, the most credit for the Mavericks turnaround over these last 12 games?
You know, I could sit here and give you a wishy-washy answer and say, well, it's a combination of all the players and, you know, everybody's producing, and there's always some truth to that. Of course it is. It's a team sport. To me, it's P.J. Washington, and it's pretty clearly P.J. Washington. He missed 5 games in the middle of the season. I mean, Dallas said they were playing all right. P.J. was not his best self, who he's been since returning. You know, like in the first 7 games of the season, Dallas was 4-3. Then he goes out. They beat Chicago, and then they have that 4-game losing streak. And what was offensive rebounding was a problem. Like Dallas kept giving those up. Just the defense was not as stout as the team wanted it to be. And there's something missing. There's clearly something missing from those games. And so PJ Washington comes back in his first full game where he actually, not coming off the bench limited minutes, but he is starting playing his full minutes, is against Oklahoma City on the second night of a back-to-back. That's when he has 27 and 17. Single-handedly, he just comes in and he's an adult in the room. He says, I am going to go single-handedly fix this rebounding issue that's been plaguing the team. He seems like every game he's providing something unique and different. Like his stat line is always bouncing around in different ways. One game it'll be the assists that are up, and then another one he'll have some blocks, and then, in another one it will be offensive rebounding. But consistently he has been scoring and rebounding, defensive rebounding for this team. And I just think that it was so absent during that stretch of games that, that losing streak, that 4-game losing streak, and those 5 games that he was out. You just felt his absence so clearly, so palpably. And so for me, it's absolutely, when you talk about what inspired, what caused the turnaround, not the person perhaps, not the players who are the best on the team, who are the most influential. When you just talk about what changed from Dallas losing 4 straight to winning 11 of 12, to me, it's PJ Washington.
We talked about a lot how P.J. Washington is arguably the most indispensable player on this team. Bobby's brought that point up numerous times in the way that he has displayed his versatility on both the offensive and defensive end. But as someone mentioned in the chat, Ashanti Way talking about the dog in P.J. Washington, he is the personification of that when it comes to this team. And P.J. Washington deserves a lot of credit when it comes to how this team has played. For me, I was decided between 2 individuals, and Bobby and I, we were talking about it, before the show, who deserves the most credit for the turnaround. And you know what? For a guy that is a time maligned on this team, a guy that sometimes gets a little bit of a bad rap because of maybe some of the decisions that he's made, I'm going to go with Jason Kidd. I'm going to go with the head coach and Jason Kidd, because one of the things, and look, I got to go back to when the Miami Heat were playing the Dallas Mavericks and Spencer Dinwiddie couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and Jason Kidd said we left him in there because of his playmaking and the decision that he was making in terms of how he was getting other guys involved despite missing shots, and he continued to stick with Spencer Dinwiddie, and Dinwiddie now is playing at an extremely high level, knocking down shots. You think about the game against the Memphis Grizzlies, hitting 2 big threes to be able to help them win that game. Jason Kidd deserves a lot of credit here because he is managing a very deep rotation, having to make sure he's balancing guys' minutes. But Jason and his even-keeled nature, not getting too high or getting too low, and one of the words that he loves to use when it comes to talking about his team and how we evaluate them, especially when there's newcomers, is the word patience. And we had to exercise a lot of it through the first 12 games where they went 5-7. But over the next 12, a team that has won 11 of those games, Jason Kidd deserves a lot of credit for the ability to manage his team, to not only get the best out of his guys, but we know how much they enjoy playing for him, whether it be Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving. Jason Kidd deserves a lot of credit for this because you can't win these kinds of games without some measure of good coaching. And we talked about this before. Jason Kidd is objectively a good coach. You may disagree at times with some of the after timeout plays or some of the decision-making when it comes to timeouts or management of the time in terms of games situations. But for the most part, this year, Jason Kidd has done a really good job with this team and deserves a lot of credit for the way that they've been able to keep themselves in it, even when things weren't going well. Jason Kidd definitely was a big part of that in my mind.
Yeah, given the very historically unprecedented nature of that losing streak where every single game came down to the last play and they kept coming this close, like, I know it was early in the season, but very, very good chances that the vibes just become like desecrated beyond repair after that loss in Utah. But, Kidd, for his part, has been very even-keeled and consistent. And one of the players that's been very even-keeled and consistent throughout this very like weird season where so many guys have been in and out is my honorable mention. That's Kyrie. Kyrie has been unbelievable. He has been unbelievable. The best player on the team this season. This season on the whole, he's just been incredible to watch. Super efficient. Should be an all-star. Kevin and I were having an interesting conversation. Is he going to get enough votes to be all-star starter? Who knows? We'll see. It's not long before polls open. But my winner came after I was kind of looking around whenever we started tossing this question around. And I said, man, it really feels like, okay, when Kyrie's on the floor, it feels like they've been really good. And it's true. Mavs are outscoring their opponents by 6.3 points per 100 possessions when Kyrie's on the floor. Do you know who else's on-off net rating is positive this season? Every single player on the team.
Okay, yeah. That works.
Every single rotation player has a positive on-off net rating this season, which implies that they have a positive plus-minus. And do you know whose net rating is not negative when they're off the floor? Every single player on the team.
Okay.
So we're talking about a complete team, and this is a team that's been missing at times this season. Dante Exum for the whole time, Maxi Kleber a ton. PJ, like you said, for a stretch, Tim, and they lost without PJ, but they were still positive without him because of how good they've been since he's come back. They've been without Luka. Kyrie's missed a couple games. Every single player on the team decided to get cold on the same night for some reason. Like, there's been so many guys in and out, but this thing has remained super ultra steady, and that's why my winner, my answer for who deserves the most credit is Nico Harrison. Nico, shout out to you, bud. We have been asking for the entirety of the Luka era. We've been begging for a Mavs team to be assembled that can be really good with Luka, but also really good without Luka. Not just 500, please, hopium. No, good without Luka. And this Mavs team has been so good without Luka this year that a lot of Mavs fans think they're better without Luka than they are with him.
Yeah.
And the same could be said for Kyrie. When Kyrie's out, the Mavs have been just that they lost that game against Utah without Kyrie, but they've won a game without him. They've won plenty of games without him, last season and in the first season that he was with the team. Clay, in and out, doesn't matter. Like, they have built a team that can survive not just one absence to a key player, multiple absences to key players. They've won games down 2 or 3 starters this season.
Mm-hmm.
They've won games missing their entire second unit. Like, that is the sign that you have a really deep team. You have a team that's bought in. You have a team that has taken these games seriously. That's an extension not just of Nico's roster building, but also of Jay Kidd's coaching, also of the stars leading by example. So the answer is kind of everybody, but Nico to me is the guy that has created this system in which these players can thrive, created a program that players want to join. And also, this ties back to Kyrie. Nico and Kidd have created a culture and an environment where the players can be themselves. And for somebody like Kyrie, that matters a whole lot. So I think everybody deserves some credit, but Nico, I think, deserves the most.
Yeah. I mean, these are good answers. I think if you're a Mavericks fan and you're hearing us say, one of the role-playing starters, but more importantly, you're saying the head coach and the general manager, that's a sign of a well-run team.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sign of a team that is more than its stars. The two most important players to the Dallas Mavericks is Luka Doncic and it's Kyrie Irving. There's no question about that. But the fact that we're talking about the turnaround, we're talking about why this team has been dominant over the past 12 games and why this is something that we basically just expect. This is finally the team that we thought we were going to see that coming together. It's a great thing for your team to be, for the praise to be going to the people in charge of it, the people leading it. There have been seasons where Luka is responsible for every win. How'd those seasons go?
Not very well.
Not well.
Not great.
Not well. There was, when Dallas missed the playoffs entirely, every single game they won, and there weren't many down the stretch, every single game they won was because of Luka and Kyrie. That wasn't a sustainable model. What is sustainable? What is good? When you have a good NBA team that you can trust, that you view as a legitimate title contender, it comes because it is a team-wide effort, spurred on, carried forth by the head coach, by the front office, by the planning, by the strategy that you take into the season, that you build the roster with. And that is what is shown over this stretch, over this dominant stretch from Dallas. To me, it's more than one player, and it's about time because we've seen that story too often. this is a much healthier, a much more dangerous, a much fuller, more complete team. That you've got to feel great about that if you're a Mavs fan.
Can I leap in and say one more thing? So it's really important to stress this. Like Jerry Krause, the architect of the Bulls title teams in the 90s, once famously said, players don't win titles, organizations do. And it's like, buddy, Michael Jordan won those championships. So like by crediting Nico and J Kidd, we're not like in any way diminishing Luka and Kyrie's contributions, but like part of the challenge and part of the success of building a roster is having this clear-cut hierarchy in place, right? Not just having Luka as your best player, but having Kyrie, who is a co-star who on some nights is your best player and for this season has been your best player, but publicly and very likely privately is like, this is Luka's team. I'm the co-star. I'm the second guy. So there's no drama there between those top two players. How many star duos have issues from the jump?
Yeah.
Like, ask some of Kyrie's former teammates, you know? How about having role players like earlier in the Luka era? The Mavs had a lineup full of role players who were good at what they did, but could not step above their role. You know, like, I'm a great seventh player, and that's what
where
I am.
Yep.
PJ Washington had 27 points against OKC in a win. PJ's like their fourth or fifth best player in their starting five, but he's been their best player sometime. Clay has been really good at spacing the floor. Lively is like maybe a top 10 big man in the NBA already. Like, they have so many guys that are role players, quote unquote, but that are bought into that role, but that are probably way better than the role that they're cast for.
Sure.
But they're cool with it because they want to win.
Yeah.
And like getting guys that want to win, getting guys that are bought in, all that stuff, that does come from the top. So Jerry Krause was kind of right. Also, this goes nowhere without Luka and Kyrie, but part of the reason that they're so simpatico, like everyone kind of shares the credit for this thing. You know, it's not just the players are great. It's also the front office are great. It's also that the role players are great. Like, everything is clicking the way it should be.
And you kind of said this, but I want to put the nail on the head, whatever that expression is. Luka had to buy in. Luka was very comfortable playing the way that he's played in Dallas. Pretty much like the entire Luka era. He has been the ball dominant, usage leading, most touches in the league, most time on the ball, most time of possession. He has been that player. And Luka is not in the front office. He is not orchestrating what they do, but obviously he has, some level of influence. He understands the vision that the front office, like the front office is very open with the vision and what they see as best for the team. And they bring that to Luka. And Luka had to be willing to be like, oh, you guys want to bring in more ball handlers to take touches away from me? Because and then, obviously the front office was like, this is a long-term plan for you to be your best in the playoffs. But Luka still had to buy into that. That is this team is a little bit different than any Mavericks team he has played on before. This is, he hasn't played on a team like this really since Real Madrid, honestly.
Yeah.
And for him to buy into that, I think that's just as important. So, as much as, if there is an aspect of Luka that has been directly responsible for this, that's the aspect. It's the willingness to buy into a slightly different vision of how he is going to be, the leader of this team, the best player on the court, but it's going to be just a little bit different than how it's looked. And I think that has been just as important to, all of this making sense and clicking into place.
There are a lot of guys responsible for the turnaround of the Dallas Mavericks. Those are some of the guys that have been huge parts of this Mavericks turnaround, having won 11 of their last 12 games, becoming the hottest team in the NBA.
We all silly like the mayor.